Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
The effect of the mind pulse is very effective for ordinary people. Everyone in the room fell down instantly, covering their heads, even the two patrol members. Chen Ming immediately drew his gun and rolled out from behind the bunker, approaching the military personnel who fell crookedly on the ground. Old Wu knew from the beginning that Chen Ming had been fiddling with something on the workbench, so when he saw the military personnel suddenly fall down without any warning, he quickly caught up with Chen Ming. The factory director was stunned for a moment without any reaction and was reminded by Old Wu before he caught up. Chen Ming took the lead in checking the fallen military personnel, confirm whether they have the willpower as strong as the guard at the exhibition hall before, and can still stand up after resisting the mind pulse. The factory director and Old Wu moved the two patrol members who fainted together to the workshop first and simply treated their injuries. And Chen Ming also confirmed that all the military personnel were unconscious and none of them still had consciousness. It can only be said that he once again experienced the power of the mind pulse. Although the scope of application of mind pulse on a cosmic scale is not large, and the types of materials that need to be repaired after each use are very complex. In addition, Chen Ming estimated that the range of action was only about 500 meters in diameter. There are various shortcomings, but it happened to be in the place where he was now. The actual effect of mind pulse was extremely exaggerated. It can only be said that psychic power is the best means for Chen Ming, who has no combat ability, to deal with threats from close range. An ability to reverse the dilemma instantly, even if the mind wave generator has shortcomings that Chen Ming has not discovered, but as long as it still has such an effect without fatal flaws, it is not too much for Chen Ming to invest more in it. After confirming that the military personnel would not wake up in a short time, Chen Ming returned to the workshop and found some ropes on the shelves in the workshop where basically everything was available. These people outside are already unconscious and have no ability to resist, so there is no need to kill them directly. Instead, it would be better to disarm these people first, tie them up, and then interrogate them. But Chen Ming just tied up a few people. Suddenly, there was a sound of metal twisting and tearing on the other side of the second underground floor. Chen Ming immediately became alert and rushed to the corner of the corridor outside the workshop. He took the terminal's photo function and went out to observe the environment. At this time, the smoke on the second underground floor had not completely dissipated. Chen Ming could only barely see a heavy power armor tearing open the blocked door on the other side of the safety passage. In an environment where only the emergency lights were on, it was full of oppression, like a tank running rampant, and quickly approached the location of the workshop. Heavy power armor? Be careful. Chen Ming reminded the factory director and Lao Wu behind him, and his hand was on the mind wave generator again, ready to be pressed at any time. However, after noticing what Chen Ming saw, the factory director immediately put his hand on Chen Ming's arm. "It's our own people. We are safe." The factory director took the initiative to speak, then waved to the other end of the corridor, put away his weapon, took off his helmet, and walked out. "It's me, Lu Shengxi." Chen Ming slightly tightened the gun in his hand, until he saw the man in heavy power armor stopped and gave a fake press to the guard behind him who didn't know the identity of the factory director, so that everyone let down their guard. Chen Ming also relaxed and put the pistol back into the holster. The man in heavy power armor approached again and asked the factory director, "What's the situation?" When Chen Ming heard this familiar voice, he recalled that he had heard this voice before when the factory director was in a meeting. This tough guy wearing central power armor is the director of the Space Station Administration. Chen Ming was a little surprised. He originally thought that the director would be an image of a greasy and irritable middle-aged man, but he didn't expect the actual difference to be so big. However, he quickly threw away the original image in his mind and remembered the image of this heavy power armor in his mind. Although he was not interested in what kind of person the director was, the power armor the director was wearing was completely different. In Chen Ming's mind, psychic power was his best way to deal with close-range threats, so a set of powerful heavy power armor was definitely the second best way. If he could get a set, then Chen Ming. Wait a minute, it seems that it is really possible. The director's power armor must be a product of the company. If Chen Ming wants a set later, it should not be difficult. Chen Ming stared at the director's power armor for a few seconds. Although he couldn't help it, he still retracted his gaze. At the same time, he didn't rush out and handed the matter of explaining the situation to the factory director. While listening, he continued to tie up the person who had fainted on the ground. In response to the director's question, the factory director immediately took the director to the deepest part of the corridor. He said to the people lying on the ground, "All the intruders have been dealt with. The mental pulse just now was released by us." The director casually kicked the military man lying dead on the ground and said, "Well, not bad." Then he contacted several of his men outside through the equipment inside the helmet. After a brief explanation, the director commanded the guards behind to follow up and began to capture those who sneaked into the management bureau. Soon, the alarm of the management bureau stopped, and all the internal equipment that had been paralyzed before began to restart, and the smoke that had not been exhausted inside was gradually fading. With so many people around to protect him, Chen Ming also relaxed a little and was no longer overly vigilant. While the guards were still dealing with the unconscious people and the piled-up bodies here, Chen Ming asked the factory director, who was also idle next to him, "If the military attacks the administration like this, what will be the consequences?" The factory director answered as if he had been prepared. "Although we all know that this was done by the military will definitely not admit it, and there will be no obvious handle left. Even if the military directly attacks our pirate space station administration, there is no problem in name for the military, but in fact, it needs to consider more than just the name. So, the military's credit will definitely plummet after this incident. What the specific consequences will be depends on the confrontation between the top leaders. But this has nothing to do with us. Our primary task now is to send you safely to the capital of the Star region. But one thing is certain, the military will suffer a great loss in this matter. How much loss it will suffer depends on the performance of the top leaders and you." At about the same time, when the director of the administration arrived at the second underground floor with the guards, inside the hotel room where the military team is located, which is relatively close to the administration building, several members of the military team were watching the content transmitted back in real time from the monitoring screen on the hacker team's computer in silence. As the monitoring just now transmitted the picture of everyone falling down in an instant, the atmosphere in the room instantly dropped to freezing point. Only the captain spoke first at this time. "This is a mind pulse. I didn't expect that the management bureau would be willing to give such a thing to Chen Ming. Alas, the mission is a complete failure. The management bureau is on guard. We can't find another chance on the space station." Xia Chao couldn't help asking, "Then what should we do? Really go to dig coal?" "It's good if you can really dig coal for us. Let's go first and see if there are other opportunities later." The other members of the military team did not express their opinions, but just quietly packed up their things. However, at this time, the door of the hotel room was knocked. "Hello, your ordered dinner has arrived." The captain was stunned for a moment and directly raised his gun and shot Tian Jiwen, who had been tied up for a while, in the head, and immediately pointed the muzzle of the gun outside the door. Before he could fire the second shot, countless bullets were fired directly into the room from outside the hotel room door. After the chaos in the administration bureau was settled, another battle broke out in the hotel. But this had nothing to do with Chen Ming, who had just walked into the director's office. After following the director into his office, the director continued to take Chen Ming and others into an independent lounge next to the office. At the same time, 3 new guards were arranged for Chen Ming to protect him closely. The patrol team member who was injured before was sent to the medical room inside the administration bureau building. The medical room of the administration bureau is better than the hospital outside to a certain extent. Coupled with the medical technology of the space age, it is not difficult to treat his burns. After settling Chen Ming, the director said to Chen Ming, "Please wait here for the time being. The shuttle will arrive in 11 hours. I will escort you safely when the shuttle arrives." Then the director called his secretary and said, "If you need anything, you can ask him to arrange it for you. I still have things to do." Such a vicious incident happened inside the administration, so it must be thoroughly investigated from top to bottom. He, as the director, naturally needs to be at the forefront of work. So Chen Ming has no objection to the director leaving. It's just that Chen Ming still has a little worry in his heart. Although the director said that he would protect him, the heavy power armor can indeed give people a heavy sense of security. But Chen Ming feels that the military will not give up because of this matter, so it still has to make some preparations in advance. And now there is something that is quite suitable to give out. Wait a moment. Hearing Chen Ming's voice, the director turned back and asked, "What's the matter?" Chen Ming took out the terminal and called up a file on it. This was found in the terminal of the soldier who died in the escape pod on the spacecraft. There is evidence of smuggling stimulants at the military outpost. In fact, Chen Ming had already wanted to give this thing to the factory director on the way here. Let the factory director pass it to the chairman. However, the factory director said that he could not contact the chairman, saying that the board of directors was about to be held and the chairman had to go to preside over it. This board of directors mainly discussed two things, one about Chen Ming and one about the military. In a sense, both were related to Chen Ming. So the chairman could not be contacted. So the factory director directly asked Chen Ming to tell the director about this matter. The director above the director and the factory director are not the same. Although Chen Ming did not know why, in short, as long as this thing was given out, it would definitely cause some trouble to the military. With this evidence, no matter who it was, they could question the military legally. And those who have connections can even directly use the internal reporting channel of the military to make the soldiers involved in smuggling drink a pot. Although smuggling is something that all the major powers have secretly known, once it is brought to light, someone must be held responsible. The director took the terminal from Chen Ming and carefully checked the contents of the smuggling list. While the director was reading the document, Chen Ming asked the director's secretary for some food. It was noon when Chen Ming came back from the capital of the Star region, and he just had some compressed food on the way back. Now it was almost evening, but there were still 11 hours to wait. If he didn't replenish his energy until 3 or 4 in the morning of the next day, something might go wrong. After the secretary brought the food, the factory director almost finished reading all the contents of the smuggling list and directly checked all the relevant information in the office. He concluded that all the contents of the list were correct. The director returned the terminal to Chen Ming and said, "The smuggling list, even the list of goods with accurate location and time. So detailed? Where did you get it?" Chen Ming naturally couldn't say that he got it by relying on Yu Hui's ship, so he casually said, "I picked it up." The director's expression under the helmet was a little complicated. His usual attitude towards work made him not very accepting of Chen Ming's ambiguous answer. But he was not Chen Ming's direct superior, and his relationship with Chen Ming was not necessarily superior and subordinate. So he did not express anything, nor did he show any opinion on Chen Ming. Just based on the content of the smuggling list that Chen Ming showed him, he said, "This list is very important. It can give the company more advantages in dealing with military-related matters. If this thing is sent back, the entire military outpost may have to undergo a wave of blood transfusion. At this point in time, combined with the previous incident, at least the military outpost can be temporarily suspended, which is very helpful for your safety." The director also knew that Chen Ming was definitely not bargaining when he took out this list at this time. So he said to the guards waiting outside the office, "Zhang Ji, you will take over my task next." A guard standing at the front of the guard team saluted the office. He quickly left the office with the other guards. The director took Chen Ming to his desk and asked Chen Ming to connect the terminal to his computer. "I will send this list to the company's directors for you. The impact of this list should be reflected soon." "Okay." Just when Chen Ming gave the director a clear reply, Chen Ming suddenly found that there was movement on the armor-piercing class that he had been paying attention to. When Chen Ming drove the spacecraft back to the pirate space station, the armor-piercing class had been installed by the engineers of Shinda Company with the large weapon provided by the government itself, the automatic pulse laser. And the weapons on the other 4 medium-sized bearing points, 2 energy weapons called heavy impact cannons, and 2 ion beams that Chen Ming was very familiar with. After the weapons were installed on the armor-piercing class and debugged, it has now been sent to a cruiser-class heavy cargo ship called Colossus, which Chen Ming had seen at Yu Hui's place. And the location of the armor-piercing class in the cargo hold of the cargo ship is just at the edge of the cargo hold. It just so happens that Chen Ming is actually lacking in combat power at this time. Although the military is unlikely to directly attack with a fleet, what if it happens? Therefore, a spaceship with sufficient combat power is still very necessary for Chen Ming. So now is actually the best time for Chen Ming to steal the ship. However, the purpose of this cargo ship and the cargo fleet to which the cargo ship belongs can be roughly inferred based on Chen Ming's previous hearing that the government is going to test the armor-piercing class. Their destination should be a colony closest to the military outpost and also the closest to the pirate space station. This is a mining colony. The main purpose of the government's freight caravan should be to regularly supply materials and take away materials from the colony. Sending the armor breaker is just a side job. However, it is true that the cargo ship will take the armor breaker to Chen Ming's direction. Chen Ming can actually wait for the cargo ship to come. But the problem is that the armor breaker needs to follow the caravan. The sailing speed of the caravan must be based on the slowest ship in the caravan. With the cruiser Colossus, the caravan's speed in hyperspace will definitely not reach the maximum speed. In addition, the cargo ship may need to stop at the colony it passes by midway, so the speed of delivery should be slower than when Chen Ming personally drove the spaceship back before. It is difficult to determine how long it will be slower, but it will definitely not be shorter. And if the caravan really successfully delivers the armor breaker to the colony, it may not be easy for Chen Ming to find an opportunity to attack the spaceship. However, just when Chen Ming discovered that the armor breaker was moving, the cargo ship it was on had just set off from the colony of the Star Region capital. At this time, they have reached the edge of the galaxy and are about to enter the hyperspace channel. This is simply a godsend, the best opportunity. The weapons of the spacecraft have all been installed, and the fuel has been fully filled. Chen Ming did not dare to use the large weapons on the bow of the armor-piercing ship directly in the ship, but the remaining 4 medium-sized weapons were enough to open a door on the Colossus from the inside of the ship. Chen Ming did not hesitate and decisively activated the heavy impact cannon of the armor-piercing class. Outside the spacecraft, it can be seen that the Colossus freighter was suddenly severely damaged near the right front of the ship. The news of the accidental discharge of the spacecraft weapon was also sent to the captain's room. The captain who drove the Colossus freighter was also an old captain who had worked in the government for decades. He did not panic when the unexpected situation suddenly occurred, and calmly assigned different tasks to the personnel in various parts of the spacecraft. The most important of these is naturally to confirm the damage to the hull and the loss of the internal cargo. The cargo hold's outer side is basically completely destroyed, and the armor-piercing class leaked out of the cargo hold. The captain immediately clicked twice on the console in front of him and said, "Received. Immediately organize a towing ship to resecure the armor-piercing class." Wait a minute, what's going on? The spacecraft is driving itself?
What?
The captain was very sure that he had heard correctly and immediately asked other people on the bridge to put the surveillance here. Then he saw the armor-piercing class directly activate the hyperspace channel system and enter hyperspace after leaving the fleet. Is there anyone on board? Impossible. A destroyer must have at least a dozen people to barely drive it, and a dozen people hiding in the cargo hold can't hide from the people in charge of inspection. The captain immediately took out the terminal, ready to skip the troublesome reporting system and report this strange situation directly to his superiors. At the same time, he was also arranging work for his deputy next to him. Notify the escort fleet immediately and ask them to find a way to track the armor-piercing class. The deputy, who looked a little young, immediately said, "Yes, but can they catch up?" The captain shook his head and said, "It's a long shot. If the spacecraft goes to full speed in hyperspace for a few seconds, it can be equivalent to flying for several months in a normal environment." This spacecraft suddenly entered the channel, and the probability of finding it back is basically 0. I just don't know if there is a positioning system installed on the ship. Maybe it can be of some use. Okay, hurry up and notify. The longer you wait, the lower the probability of finding the armor-piercing class. The deputy nodded quickly and left the captain. The captain looked at the location where the armor-piercing class disappeared on the monitor, squinting his eyes as if thinking about something. At this time, the armor-piercing class that had successfully entered the hyperspace channel had also successfully accelerated to the maximum speed in hyperspace. Although the government did install a positioning system on the armor-piercing class, The entire spacecraft was under Chen Ming's control, and there was no difference between installing it and not installing it. In addition, due to the speed limit in hyperspace, even if the positioning system can really work, other ships have no chance of catching up with the armor-piercing class. The rest is that the armor-piercing class will fly along the route and may be arrested by the patrol team in the hyperspace channel when passing through the government colony system. But Chen Ming can also choose to jump out of the hyperspace channel directly when approaching the system and bypass the dangerous system in the normal universe environment. In the normal space environment, the speed of the armor-piercing class is not as slow as the iron ore, which has not been modified. Jumping out of the hyperspace channel and re-entering the hyperspace channel after bypassing the system will not delay much time. If it is really too late, Chen Ming can also choose a more risky but faster way. Directly pass through the dangerous area outside the hyperspace channel, which is full of hyperspace channel clouds and hyperspace lightning. For the spacecraft, Chen Ming can do remote repair by consuming mental power. For Chen Ming, who can repair the ship infinitely as long as the materials are complete, forcing the dangerous area of the hyperspace channel is actually an option. The final destination of the armor-breaking class was set by Chen Ming at the space station. Although he will go to the capital of the star field next, it is not easy for the armor-breaking class to appear in front of the government or the company. Moreover, Chen Ming is in a hurry to bring the armor-breaking class here because he lacks a guarantee of combat power. If everything goes well and the company accepts him without any accidents, then Chen Ming will directly send the ship to the Dark Cemetery. At that time, the ship will be handed over to Gamma B for control. Chen Ming will have 2 destroyers indirectly controlled by the Afterglow AI. Moreover, Gamma AB is about to be upgraded to become a beta-level Afterglow individual. The capabilities of the 2 ships under Chen Ming's complete control are definitely much higher than those of the ships that Chen Ming only indirectly controls through AI. Although Chen Ming chose to accept the company's invitation, he should mainly stay in the company located in the prosperous star field in the future. But he didn't sign a contract to sell himself. With the help of hyperspace channels and even stargates, it is not difficult to go out to the edge star field. Chen Ming is a psychic and an extremely important person to the company, as long as he shows his due ability after joining the company for the second time. He believes that the company will definitely give him the permission to use the Stargate. Of course, the premise of everything Chen Ming thinks about now is that everything that happens next will go smoothly. Chen Ming actually took less than a minute to deal with the armor-piercing issue. It will arrive near the pirate space station after a few hours of sailing. When Chen Ming shifted his attention from armor-piercing back to the present, the director was still contacting the company's senior directors through a system built into his power armor. He sent the evidence of military smuggling that Chen Ming gave him and the actual cargo list he had just checked. After waiting for about 2 minutes, the director finally stopped talking to the director and turned to Chen Ming and said, "The efficiency of the military is very high. It won't be long before the report will be sent to the Star Region government and transferred to the military. Then the upper military district will start investigating the situation at the lower level. This process doesn't take too long. Only when someone goes down in front of the outpost can someone come up behind. If they don't want to go down, someone will help them go down. This period is the best time for us to send you to the Star Region capital without interference from the military. At the same time, the company can also take advantage of the time when the military personnel are changing to make preparations in other aspects. Once you arrive, you can start to take back control of the galaxy." The last sentence the director said sounded a bit like what the director who was talking to him asked him to tell Chen Ming. Chen Ming naturally had no objection to this. He nodded to the director and said nothing. The director soon left the lounge. He should have work to deal with within the management bureau. The only people left in the lounge with Chen Ming were 3 guards and a patrol member arranged by the factory director, as well as the factory director and Lao Wu who had been accompanying Chen Ming. Although the 2 of them did not look too tired, they still chose to close their eyes and sit on the sofa to rest. After all, there might be some troubles waiting for them before sending Chen Ming safely to the spaceship. As Chen Ming's direct superior, the factory director could also be regarded as the person who introduced Chen Ming back to the company, so he had to stay with Chen Ming. Although Lao Wu looked like he had run away a long time ago, and he was actually just an ordinary maintenance employee, he was still here. It might be because of the factory director, or it might be because of Chen Ming, or it might be both. But no matter what the reason was, Chen Ming was very happy to see the two of them staying here. Chen Ming did not disturb them too much, and also leaned on the sofa and closed his eyes. But he was not resting, but contacting the two Gamma AIs to make some preparations for the worst in advance. At the same time, he was also paying attention to the situation of the armor-piercing class to ensure that it could arrive safely near the pirate space station. 11 hours later. It was 3 o'clock in the morning of Earth time. The director was still wearing his heavy power armor. He suddenly pushed open the door of the lounge, knocked on the door and said, "The spaceship has arrived and is parked at the patrol dock. We have to leave." Although the military personnel had been dealt with almost in the time just now, the administration's vigilance against military infiltration had not been relaxed. So Chen Ming, under the guidance of the director, came to the roof of the administration building. As before, he directly used the shuttle to reach where Chen Ming should go at the fastest speed. The shuttle itself was not big, and Chen Ming and 3 others, plus a director wearing heavy power armor, were almost full. Arrived at the patrol dock. This place was a little different from when Chen Ming came to send the pirate leader before. The broken space arm had been completely connected, and the function of the space arm closer to the space station was restored more perfectly. The space arm should be completely repaired in a few weeks. In the docks that have been repaired, in addition to some combat ships that Chen Ming had seen before when fighting with Yue's ships, there is also a small fleet with the Xinda Company logo engraved on the outside of the spacecraft. There are a total of 28 ships, 9 destroyers and 19 escorts. 8 of these 9 destroyers are Hammerhead class, which has a very good reputation among destroyer-class ships. It has moderate firepower, moderate armor strength, moderate ship shield performance, and a very suitable price compared to other destroyers. It is the king of cost-effectiveness among the spacecraft designed by Xinda Company. Although it has a high cost-effectiveness, it does not mean that the ability of the spacecraft is very poor. Otherwise, a spacecraft with only cost-effectiveness but no ability would not be welcomed by the 3 places of civilian, government, and military for the Hammerhead-class spacecraft. The remaining destroyer is a destroyer-class aircraft carrier, the Cowherd, which is the flagship of this fleet. The Bulldog class has a length of 443 meters, which is extremely outrageous among destroyers, and a beam that is almost as wide as the length, as well as a height brought by the multi-layered flight deck that can carry a large number of fighter planes. It can almost be used as a mobile war fortress. In addition to the fighters equipped with point defense weapons and small shields, the Cowherd itself also relies on its huge body to carry a large number of medium and small point defense weapons. In exchange for the strong cover ability in actual combat with external attack means. Chen Ming once saw on the internet that someone who had driven a civilian-grade Cowherd said that driving this kind of ship was boring, but the sense of security given by the Cowherd was difficult to get from other spacecraft. After seeing the appearance of this spacecraft with his own eyes, although Chen Ming had not actually seen its combat capabilities, he also had some such feelings in his heart. Generally speaking, the type of destroyer itself determines that the length of the spacecraft is usually between 100 and 300 meters when it is designed. And this Cowherd, which is 400 meters away, is obviously wrong in design. But the reason is relatively simple, that is, it was designed earlier. It already existed when humans were in the early space age. After generations of updates, the Cowherd has not been eliminated. So this ship that is larger than an ordinary destroyer has been preserved until now. In fact, Chen Ming thinks that the company has a reason for sending this Cowherd. First of all, he can be sure that the Xinda Company must have its own cruisers, or even battleships. However, the significance of ships above the cruiser level is different from that of ordinary destroyers and escorts. Sending them out definitely requires a lot of approval procedures. Not only the company, but also the government knows about the company's mobilization of spacecraft. So cruisers cannot be mobilized easily. But the Cowherd is different. It is a destroyer, and it happens to be the largest type of destroyer. Although it is not as good as a cruiser, its actual escort and combat capabilities have reached the peak of destroyers. So the company chose the Cowherd as the flagship when it needed to send Chen Ming to the capital of the Star region as soon as possible. And if Chen Ming remembers correctly, The mobilization of a cluster of 10 or more destroyers or 20 or more frigates needs to be reported to the government. Therefore, the fleet specifications of 9 destroyers and 19 escorts are the maximum number of ships that Shinda Company can mobilize in a short period of time. From here, Chen Ming once again saw the importance that Shinda Company attached to him. However, because this Cowherd-class ship could not be parked in the destroyer-level dock designed for ordinary destroyers, it was finally parked in the only 2 cruiser positions on the dock. That's where the shuttle Chen Ming was going to land. In order to facilitate the landing and reorganization of the fleet after takeoff, the other ships of the fleet were also parked nearby. The 19 escorts were all parked at the positions next to them that were supposed to be docked for destroyers. 17 of the 19 frigates are unified Sentinel-class frigates. Although Chen Ming was a little disliked by the Sentinel in his hand, it was because the civilian Sentinel itself was a bit too castrated. But the military Sentinel still has a place in combat. The other 2 frigates are a professional cargo ship called the Buffalo class, and the other is a Drum-class fuel transporter that Chen Ming had seen before. The Buffalo transports some supplies that are difficult to store on combat ships, while the Drum class is used to transport logistical supplies and fuel to the fleet. Although the pickup mission actually only takes a few hours, the standard configuration of the mission arrangement is still needed. With such a fleet of 28 ships, it is definitely a force that cannot be underestimated in the marginal star field. It is definitely not a problem to escort Chen Ming back to the capital of the star field. However, even though Chen Ming has seen such a fleet and has such a fleet to protect him, he still feels that the danger is not over yet. And the source of danger seems to come from all directions, and he has no idea what is still threatening him. So in the last period of time before the spacecraft lands, Chen Ming took the initiative to ask the factory manager next to him, "How many people are there in our maintenance plant now?" "You, me, Old Wu, Baldy, Tian Jiwen, 3 newcomers, and a deputy factory manager." The factory manager gave the answer in an instant, and at the same time guessed Chen Ming's thoughts and said, "You want to ask who the traitor is, right?" "Yes, I can rule out Baldy first. He mentioned to me before that the military was investigating me. He can't be the traitor. Then the others? No need to guess." The director, who had been constantly giving orders to people outside through the communication equipment installed in the helmet, suddenly interrupted the conversation between Chen Ming and the factory manager. "My men had found the body of your Tian Jiwen in a hotel before. The military kidnapped him and killed him. The kidnapping took place the day before, but there were no signs of abuse on his body, which means that he cooperated with the military and it was him who leaked your identity. As for the person who opened the door of the workshop, he was one of the 3 newcomers arranged by the company to enter the maintenance plant. His body was also confirmed in the high-rise corridor. In addition, the director looked at the factory director and said, although the deputy factory director is a bit of a beast, he is not a traitor." The factory director frowned slightly when he heard the director mention the deputy factory director, but he didn't say anything. Chen Ming summarized it briefly and said, "In other words, it was Tian Jiwen who leaked my information, and then the military relied on the relationship of infiltrating the space station to kill me, right?" "Yes, I understand." Chen Ming nodded clearly. Since the person is dead, it means that the sense of danger he still feels now is not from the inside, but from other places. It means that the military has not completely given up the idea of taking action against him and must be waiting for him somewhere. However, Chen Ming has done everything he can, and the rest depends on whether the company's preparations and his own preventive measures are enough. The shuttle quickly approached the location of the cowherd. It directly docked on the flight deck where the cowherd parked the fighter. The director got off the ship first, and the huge heavy power armor almost completely covered the hatch of the shuttle. After Chen Ming got off the ship, other people immediately surrounded him and led him to the interior of the spacecraft. From the flight deck to the hatch of the spacecraft next to it, it was only less than 20 meters away. However, on this road, Chen Ming suddenly felt something slightly strange near his temple. It was like the feeling when the barber was cutting his hair with a blade next to his neck. Chen Ming knew that his perception of danger had reached a very sensitive level, so this feeling made him raise his arm and block it next to his temple. The next moment he raised his arm, a ball of sparks suddenly burst out from his armor. Chen Ming's arm couldn't help but tilt to the side, and he could clearly see a flattened bullet embedded in the armor plate. This was a bullet from a sniper rifle similar to an electromagnetic javelin. The guards next to him immediately surrounded him to protect Chen Ming. But the second shot hit Chen Ming's temple before everyone had time to react. Chen Ming's head tilted like his arm. However, he did not receive any damage from the shot. Not only was the top-level protection provided by the pure white cloud steel armor plate, but also the multi-layer buffer structure installed inside the armor plate when he modified the armor plate absorbed most of the impact of the bullet. Although Chen Ming was somewhat unable to maintain balance due to the impact of the bullet, his mind was not thinking about the bullet, but about the feeling he had just had. The subtle feeling of someone holding a knife to his neck just now was not the danger sensed by the danger perception, but the upcoming attack he felt. Chen Ming knew very well that his danger perception ability could not detect those attacks that did not pose a threat to him before, but now it can. Perhaps because he has been sensing danger all the time, his danger perception ability has evolved. Just like he could only control the frigate before, and broke through the limit when controlling the refractive level. His psychic power seemed to have many effects that did not exist on the panel. A bunch of thoughts suddenly appeared in Chen Ming's mind, but he did not forget his current situation. He immediately controlled his posture, hid behind the director, and turned his head to look in the direction where the bullet came from as if nothing had happened. Chen Ming's eyesight was still good, and he could see that in the corner of the dock, a man was pinned to the ground by a group of patrol members. Chen Ming had never seen him before, but his eyes were full of resentment when he looked at Chen Ming. Chen Ming ignored him and walked into the cowherd's cabin under the protection of others. As for the military man just now, he might have been able to escape from the space station, but now he has completely lost the possibility of escape. Chen Ming will probably never see him again in his life. Although Chen Ming doesn't care much about a dead person or a person who is about to die. However, the director is very concerned about this. His face in the helmet box was as dark as ink, and he immediately contacted the guard team he had arranged to track the military team. The one you let go has now run to the patrol team dock. You must explain to me how you let him go. The voice of the team leader came from the communication channel. I'm very sorry, Chief. We just received the wrong intelligence instructions and haven't found his trace for a long time. The chief frowned and said, You go back to the management bureau and you will be punished later. The captain on the other side didn't expect that the chief didn't scold them as usual and immediately agreed as if he was relieved, yes. Then hung up the communication. The captain didn't know the change of the chief, but the chief knew what was going on. The patrol team dock has been completely closed for 12 hours since the order from above to take Chen Ming away. The only ones who have the right to enter and exit are the patrol team's captain and deputy captain. There are only two situations in which people can be let in. One is that the military personnel have been squatting here 12 hours ago without being discovered, and the other is that there is a traitor in the patrol team. The director knows which probability is higher. Moreover, the guard team he sent out just now and the patrol team cooperated together, and the information was also communicated. In other words, the source of the wrong information is the patrol team. Since the captain of the patrol team is standing next to the dock below, the situation of the deputy captain who was also responsible for the pursuit of military personnel in the space station before can be explained. Where is the deputy captain? I can't contact him. That means he is a traitor. The director directly announced the result to the deputy captain and contacted the management bureau at the same time. Cancel all the rights of the deputy chief of the patrol team on the space station. Issue a wanted notice first. I will deal with him after I finish the important things here. When the director was explaining the matter of dealing with the traitor, Chen Ming had already entered the interior of the cowherd. The factory director and Lao Wu did not follow in. However, they had escorted Chen Ming for so long, which made him feel that it was enough. From now on, it would be his own way. The captain of the cowherd even came to greet him in person. After seeing Chen Ming, he took the initiative to extend his hand and said, Welcome, Mr. Chen. Please follow me. Chen Ming extended his hand and shook hands with him, followed him, and went to a lounge inside the spacecraft. On the table in the lounge were some fruits, a terminal, and a card. After taking Chen Ming in, the captain took the initiative to open the terminal, handed it to Chen Ming, and said, "Mr. Chun, this is the general structure of our spacecraft. These red-marked areas are areas inside our spacecraft that only professionals can enter and exit. You can enter and exit other unmarked areas at will. This card is an authority card that can be used on the ship. This card is required to ensure access between different areas. I still need to be responsible for this mission. If you need anything, you can contact me directly through the terminal or find someone else." Chen Ming put away the terminal and the card and nodded to him. Although it was only a 4 or 5 hour journey, the attitude of doing things was very responsible. The captain quickly left the lounge, and Chen Ming was the only one left in the lounge. So Chen Ming immediately took off his gauntlet and reached out to press on the cabin of the spacecraft. Here, Chen Ming also got a prompt that he could control the spacecraft. But he was not in a hurry to control the spacecraft directly, because he almost fainted when he controlled the 200-meter-long refractive-class spaceship last time. He had to be prepared before controlling the spaceship that doubled in length and several times in size. At least not now when he couldn't even guarantee safety. What if he couldn't bear it and passed out, and something unexpected happened during the voyage of the spaceship? That would be a big problem, and the countermeasures he prepared before couldn't be implemented on his own. It would be better to wait until we reach the capital of the star region and try to control it when we get off the ship. Anyway, even if Chen Ming fainted directly, someone from the company would definitely send him to the hospital safely. While the spaceship was still connected at the last moment away from the space station, Chen Ming thought about it and simply called his boss. The call was connected after a while. After all, it was past 3 in the morning, and the boss's voice was full of sleepiness. "Xiaomu? What's the matter?" "Boss, I have to go out again later, and it may take some time to come back this time." "So urgent?" "Yes, it might be a few days later, but the military acted too quickly on me, and the company's ship to pick me up is ready, so I plan to leave." The boss suddenly became a little energetic and said, "Are you going to follow the company's path in the future? That's not bad. Keep in touch when you have time. I'm still very interested in how you will develop in the future." "Yeah." While talking, the cowherd also started the engine and prepared to set sail with its fleet. When Chen Ming was in the lounge before, he had already told the director in advance that he wanted to bring his own ship. So now, Chen Ming's Iron Ore and Centurion are flying behind this fleet. Although Chen Ming only has 2 spacecraft control positions, one of which is still on the armor-piercing class. But Chen Ming only needs to temporarily switch the control position and give the Iron Ore and Centurion a follow-up command. With the autopilot system, this is not a problem. The fleet left the space station and soon arrived at the edge of the galaxy and entered the hyperspace. When the fleet entered the hyperspace channel, although Chen Ming was on another spaceship, he subconsciously scanned the surroundings with the sensor of the Centurion that followed him. Then he found that a large number of military fleets appeared on the edge of the area around the space station that was closer to the galaxy's star gravity well, and on several major hyperspace routes leading to other galaxies. Chen Ming couldn't help but whispered, "The army. Is this going to overturn the table?" "What's wrong, Xiaomu?" The boss's voice came from the terminal that had not yet completely disconnected the communication signal. Chen Ming immediately said, "The army has blocked the hyperspace route to other galaxies, and we are blocked." "What the hell?" As soon as the boss's words fell, the military spacecraft sent a message to the fleet of the Shinda Company for routine inspection. In the marginal star field, whether it is the government or the military, their power is relatively greater than that of the prosperous star field. So to be honest, it is not excessive to conduct routine inspections on passing spacecraft. The army occasionally lacks performance and will also block people in the channel passage. Whoever is blocked will be unlucky. This has always been an unspoken rule in the marginal star field. However, this is the first time that the army has directly blocked the entrance of the pirate space station. As for the reason, Chen Ming knows it very well. The 4 routes around the galaxy leading to different galaxies are all blocked by the military fleet. It seems that he has no way to escape. An unexpected situation occurred in the hyperspace channel. Chen Ming naturally couldn't just sit there and wait for death in the lounge. He immediately stood up and pushed open the door of the lounge. There was a crew member waiting at the door of the lounge. When he saw Chen Ming coming out, he immediately said respectfully, "Mr. Chen." Chen Ming didn't waste time talking to him and said directly, "The fleet seems to have encountered some troubles. Please take me to the captain." The crew members didn't understand Chen Ming's meaning because they couldn't receive military messages from a distance like Chen Ming. However, he didn't say much and stretched out his hand to make a gesture of invitation. According to the captain's previous request, he took Chen Ming to the interior of the cowherd. What surprised Chen Ming was that he was led by the crew members to the bridge command room, which should be the most important position of the spacecraft. Chen Ming didn't notice it just now. When he really arrived, he found that the bridge command room was not marked in red on the spacecraft map. I don't know if it was the captain's special arrangement. Anyway, as soon as Chen Ming entered the bridge command room, he saw a busy scene. Next to the large number of control devices in the command room, a large number of crew members are doing their best to complete their own control or operation tasks. The Cowherd class is different from ordinary destroyers. It is not an ordinary firepower output warship, but a command-type warship equipped with a large number of support equipment and a large number of fighters as the core of the battlefield. These equipment and the manpower needed to support these equipment have created the appearance of the command room. Chen Ming did not interfere with them. He continued to approach the captain of the Cowherd class next to the central control panel under the leadership of the crew. Just when Chen Ming came over, the captain was contacting the space station through the communication equipment to request support. Although the number of ships that the military blocked the hyperspace channels in 4 directions did not seem to be large, the total number was more than 100. Even 100 frigates were not something the company fleet could handle, not to mention that the military had prepared a lot of destroyers in it. The space station naturally responded immediately. A support fleet will soon enter the hyperspace channel. After doing this, the captain noticed Chen Ming coming over and nodded and said, "Mr. Chen." Chen Ming also nodded and said, "I'm just taking a look. You can do whatever you want." The captain returned his attention to the front. A few minutes later, a communication channel was connected to him. Chen Ming, who was quite close to the captain, could also hear the conversation in the communication channel. "We are not threatening the space station. We are just carrying out our mission and reviewing the passing spacecraft." The voice of the director's secretary also sounded from the communication channel. "Reviewing the spacecraft requires relevant documents to support it." "Where are your documents?" "Wait a minute." The military directly sent a document to all the spacecraft. It can be seen that the content is indeed a complete mission document. Due to the recent increase in the number of afterglows, the military has increased the frequency of patrols and changed the patrol location to the vicinity of the pirate space station where afterglow ships have appeared in large numbers. According to the content of the document, this document was determined in advance before the military came, even before Chen Ming's news leaked. Could it be that the military blocking here was really an accident? Chen Ming looked at the military spacecraft that blocked all 4 hyperspace channels leading to other galaxies on the sensor and threw this idea out of his mind. If the military was not looking for him, then his name would be written backwards in the future. Moreover, Chen Ming believed that the military would be very skilled in forging documents. Chen Ming sent the document to the boss who had not yet disconnected the communication, to see if the boss would have any opinion. However, the boss seemed to be busy with something because of the military's actions mentioned by Chen Ming and did not give him an immediate answer. The military sent the document over, and after a while, they said, "Has it been confirmed? There is no problem with our mission this time. You can ask normally, but don't interfere too much with our mission." However, the secretary suddenly pointed out the problem with the military document. But it seems that there is no such document on the military's public website. There is always a delay in uploading these things to the website. This is very common. You can find the content of this document on the website in about 1 to 2 weeks. If you don't believe it, you can contact them directly and ask in person whether there is actually such a document. What the military said was reasonable, and it sounded reasonable. But in fact, the biggest problem was that they set the location of the review in the galaxy where the pirate space station was located, which was also the most rogue place for the military. The military guards the hyperspace channel, and the way in and out of the pirate space station is completely blocked. Not to mention the pirates, If other people have to go through multiple military inspections before they can come, they may choose to take a detour. Not to mention that the main flow of people in the pirate space station are a group of people with unclean identities. The military's actions are to cut off the routes of the space station. If the military in other places also follows this, the investment of so many companies is a joke. And during this period, several spacecrafts have appeared in 2 channels and are approaching. But they saw the situation in the galaxy hyperspace and all dared not approach, as if they were ready to run away at any time. It is impossible to say that there is no impact on the space station. If the military really conducts inspections according to normal rules, it will never go to this extent. Just when the atmosphere in the communication channel gradually became cold, Chen Ming suddenly heard the boss's voice in the headset. "Xiao Mu, I found a wanted notice here. Take a look." Chen Ming took out his terminal and saw the file sent by the boss. The content of the file is a wanted notice. Chen Ming's wanted information. The crime is to create a large-scale public hazard incident with dangerous creatures, as well as some minor crimes such as resisting arrest and attacking public officials. It seems that the military has directly put the blame for the destruction of the mining space station on Chen Ming, and the bounty is 90 million. This wanted notice was established yesterday. In other words, the military fleet is definitely coming for him. Chen Ming took a few steps back, avoiding the captain, and whispered to the other end of the communication channel. "Is my bounty just this little? Are you focusing on the wrong place?" The people in charge of the military outpost have completely ignored their own face and the position under their buttocks. They will kill you if they come directly near the space station. And I have been listening to what you said just now. The military documents are so fast. I feel that there are too many people and things involved here. The boss paused for a moment and continued, "But it is true. After all, it involves sky steel. I have to help you check it out." "Okay." The boss didn't say anything else for the time being. On Chen Ming's side, the captain was also in a dilemma. There were not many options left: either force it, bypass it, or turn back to the space station. Or just cooperate honestly. Breaking through the military blockade is not a rational behavior, and bypassing it is even more ridiculous. If the fleet has discovered the whereabouts of the military before entering the hyperspace, the fleet can choose to fly directly from space slowly, fly over the military blockade, and then enter the hyperspace channel. Or you can bypass the channel and go to the non-channel area in the hyperspace, those places covered with hyperspace channel clouds. But doing so requires enduring the destruction of a large amount of hyperspace lightning in the clouds. If there is no large warship leading the way in front, it will definitely not be able to withstand it with just the destroyers and guards. What's more, the military fleet has now seen the fleet of the Cinda Company. They are not fools and will not let the Cinda Company fleet go. Even if the fleet wanted to turn back to the space station, it would probably be impossible, because the military ships were definitely equipped with blocking pulse equipment that could restrict ships from entering and exiting the hyperspace channel at will. It might even be because of the reinforcements from the space station that the military fleet guarding the hyperspace channel suddenly surrounded them. The total number of military fleets guarding the 4 directions was just over 100, with about half of them assigned to each direction. A total of 50 warships approached. Half were destroyers and half were escorts. The destroyers were basically models called enforcers, while the escorts were mostly centurions and expeditions. The fleet could not actively attack the military ships, but fortunately, with the protection of the ships reinforced by the space station, the fleet's buttocks would not be blocked. The military did not give face at this time. The second notification message was sent directly. The fleet was required to publish the list of spaceship members, stop blocking the spaceship signals, and let the military conduct a deep scan of all the fleet's ships. It could not actively attack, and there was no way to escape directly. In this situation, the captain can only do one thing: accept the investigation. The captain suddenly turned around, left the console, and opened a closed door behind the bridge. The room behind the door, if Chen Ming remembered correctly, seemed to be red on the ship map. After walking in first, the captain said to Chen Ming, "Mr. Chen, please come over." Chen Ming did not feel any danger from behind the door, and he also wanted to know what the captain was going to do, so he did not resist. Follow the captain into this bright small room with walls made of special materials and some cargo boxes piled in the corner. Mr. Chen, this is the shielding cabin of our spacecraft, which can shield the scanning signal. Chen Ming waved his hand and said, I know this. You want me to stay here for a while, right? When Chen Ming was working at the mining space station, he heard from his colleagues that some cargo ships would have similar modifications. Originally, these materials were used for some working spacecraft that needed to be close to stars frequently and were used to make the star protection layer on the outside of the spacecraft. Later, someone discovered that this material also had a certain degree of interference with scanning signals. So this material became the best cover for some caravans to carry out smuggling activities. I didn't expect that even Shinda Company had such a design. The captain next to him showed an apologetic look after Chen Ming spoke. Chen Ming didn't embarrass him too much. He walked straight to the cargo boxes in the corner and sat on them. After all, rationally speaking, the captain's current approach is the best approach when facing the military. If Chen Ming were in the captain's position, he would do the same. It's better to be quick. The captain left the shielded cabin with a grateful face. Before the cabin door was completely closed, Chen Ming explained the current situation to his boss. After going out, he asked his boss for his opinion. After ensuring that the door of the shielded cabin was closed, the captain released the signal blocking of the spacecraft and let the military spacecraft start scanning the fleet. At the same time, he was also prepared to directly attack the military when the shielded cabin did not work. The security scan went smoothly all the way. The military's contact had not been interrupted at this time. The military man just now suddenly said to the captain, "What's the matter with your two unmanned ships?" The captain had already received a confession of collusion and said, "That's us testing the newly developed remote control system." Really? The military left 2 words and didn't say much. The scan was soon over, but the military fleet still needed time to verify the scan data. The captain reopened the signal blocking and reopened the door of the shielded cabin. After hearing the door behind him open, Chen Ming looked away from the cargo box in front of him, contacted his boss again, and then left the shielded cabin, returned to the bridge control center, and returned to the captain's side. When he came over, Chen Ming happened to hear a sentence from the military on the communication channel. "We now have reason to suspect that your 2 ships are stolen spacecraft. Please cooperate with us to keep the spacecraft and board the spacecraft for inspection." Now, there is no need to confirm. It can be 100% certain that the military is here to cause trouble for Chen Ming. At the same time, Chen Ming also heard the boss's warning, "Xiao Mu, I found some strange news. There seems to be a problem within the military. Some people in the military outpost seem to be rebelling. They won't talk to you about any rules. You must be prepared for a head-on battle. I feel that there is a big problem with this matter. Some people who shouldn't intervene have intervened. Xiaomu, you try to hold on. I'll help you think of a solution." Because of this somewhat outrageous news, Chen Ming couldn't help but say, "Wait, rebellion?" The last 2 words immediately attracted the captain's puzzled eyes. And at the moment when the captain turned his head, Chen Ming suddenly saw that several military spacecraft suddenly activated their shields outside the bridge porthole. Take the lead in launching weapons and attacking the fleet. Several laser beams of energy weapons directly hit Chen Ming's iron ore. Chen Ming immediately activated the shield of the iron ore egg. The attack of scattered energy weapons for less than a second did not cause too much damage to the Bayun steel armor. However, Chen Ming immediately ordered the iron ore and the fighters with it to hide behind other ships in the fleet. He immediately pressed the headset and said without disguising, "Boss, the military has directly attacked us." At the same time Chen Ming was speaking, the captain also shouted in the fleet's communication channel, "Be prepared for battle." "I know." As soon as the boss finished speaking, he suddenly said very angrily, "Damn, someone is disgusting me." In Chen Ming's impression, it seemed that it was the first time the boss had said a swear word. However, Chen Ming did not have time to figure out what disgusted the boss and made him say this. He now had to cooperate with other ships in the fleet to carry out subsequent operations. The military took the lead and was recorded by the sensors of so many ships on the scene, so it was impossible for the company to be beaten for no reason. Anyway, The record was in hand, and even if there was a confrontation with the military in the future, the responsibility would not be left on the company. After the captain's order was issued, the fleet immediately entered a wartime state. The porthole protection layer was opened, and the image scanned by the sensor appeared on the large screen next to the inside. At the same time, a projector projected the battlefield situation around the fleet to the center of the bridge control center. The fleet began to shrink its front line, relying on the space station patrol teams, spacecraft, to quickly distance itself from the military fleet. Although there was support from the space station, the company fleet was at an absolute disadvantage in terms of the number of ships, with more than 60 ships compared to more than 100 ships. The only good news was that it would take some time for the military fleet that blocked the other hyperspace channel to approach from the channel entrance. At the same time, there was still some support from the space station. If this military fleet could be defeated, then there would be a chance for everything to turn around. After the military launched the attack, the Cowherd, as the flagship of the fleet, immediately launched a counterattack against the military. The missile bays in various parts of the ship were opened, and a large number of annihilator missiles were fired directly at the most densely populated areas of the military fleet. This is a missile without any advanced guidance and locking function. Some are just large enough to cover firepower and the real power after the explosion. It can only be said to be average on a battlefield where small-scale ships are dispersed and flexible, but in battles of medium or larger scale, this kind of annihilator is very useful. While putting pressure on the opponent, it can also attract a large part of the firepower of military ships' point defense weapons. It is a very good suppression-type missile weapon. While the annihilator missiles were launched in large numbers, the fighters on the flight deck of the Cowherd were also started. The Cowherd carries two different fighters, namely the Warthog Fighter Wing and the Longbow Fighter Wing. The Warthog Fighter Wing carries two short-range grenade weapons and a complete set of heat-seeking missile launchers. The range explosion when the grenade weapon is detonated and the effect of the heat-seeking missile itself make this fighter have a strong restraining effect on missile-type weapons. The two weapons carried by the other longbow fighter are somewhat different from the Warthog, a quick-fire PD laser cannon, which is also a point defense-type weapon. The other is the Cyber SRM missile, which is also carried on Chen Ming's Gladiator class and has a strong effect on shields. These two types of fighters have very strong cover and auxiliary capabilities. After starting, they followed the other ships in the fleet and launched an attack on the military fleet. The military may not have wanted to take the initiative to open fire at the beginning, but things happened, and the fleet of Shinda Company also began to move, and the military could not bother to explain anything. They chose to open the battle line while the fleet of Shinda Company was moving. Relying on the unique, powerful firepower of military ships, a dense firepower network was directly built in space, almost covering the entire company fleet. In an instant, countless flames broke out in the center of the battle line of both sides. Dense beams of live ammunition and energy weapons flashed on the shields of ships on both sides. The design of the military ships made their shields unable to withstand the threat of a large number of shield-breaking weapons on the company's side. The shields of the military fleet at the forefront of the battle line were instantly in danger, but they seemed to be controlled by a flexible hand. All the ships that could not withstand the company's firepower quickly exchanged positions with the ships in the rear that did not receive more attacks in the battle line. In the complex and intertwined battle lines, they took damage for each other. The main capabilities of the Shinda Company's fleet are concentrated on escort and shield breaking. The military ships can indeed be suppressed in a short period of time, so that their weapons cannot fire because of the shield radiation energy overload. But the actual efficiency of destroying the ship is the same as the ship's Chen Ming has. In the case of no way to end the military ship, and the military has an excellent commander. The speed of breaking the shield and penetrating the armor is completely unable to keep up with the speed of the military's dispatch and rotation of the ship. The military's ships have more recovery time than the company's ships. They are both destroyers and escorts, and their number is even less than that of the company in a short period of time. But the actual combat effectiveness of the military's ships is stronger than that of the company's fleet. As the battle time increases, more military ships join the battle, and this feeling is even more obvious. Even if the space station was sending spacecraft into the hyperspace channel for rescue, it was the same. After several rounds of exchange of fire, the company's fleet was directly surrounded by the military's fleet. Although the overall number of warships on both sides was similar, less than 100 to more than 100, but the company had already fallen into a clear disadvantage. A large number of ships were damaged and lost their combat capabilities. The Cowherd-class fighters were also unable to play a sufficient role due to the military's unique flexible and professional tactical adjustment and scheduling capabilities. Either they returned home damaged, or they were directly destroyed in space. Chen Ming's Centurion was like a drop of water in the ocean in the battle of hundreds of ships, without any sense of existence. He even felt that even if the fighters came to the battlefield, they would not play a decisive role at all. The situation was developing one-sidedly in the military's favor. Chen Ming was too late to leave the cowherd now. Even if he left, there was no chance of escaping from the military's encirclement. If the company's fleet was defeated here, Chen Ming would have no future. So in the current situation, there were not many things he could do. The fastest and most effective thing was to control the cowherd class he was on. Relying on his psychic power and his panel, he could do things that were absolutely impossible under normal circumstances. The situation is serious. Chen Ming took off his gauntlet without much hesitation and pressed it against the wall behind him. New spaceship signal detected. Whether to change the brain control signal connection. Number of currently connected spaceships, 2 halves. Chen Ming is currently directly connected to a Centurion-class spaceship on the battlefield and an armor-piercing class spaceship on its way. As for the iron ore, which has been hiding behind the cowherd, Chen Ming has stopped controlling it from the moment the battle began. Anyway, the cowherd will basically not move, and the iron ore is safe there. So in this situation, Chen Ming can only disconnect the armor-piercing class connection first and let it continue to fly to the space station according to the previous autopilot system. At the same time, let the Centurion start to retreat from the edge of the battle line and be ready to transfer the control of the Centurion to the armor-piercing class at any time. There was no time to wait too long, and Chen Ming silently said in his heart, "Change." For a moment, Chen Ming's mind suddenly became dazed. Then, there was nothing else, and the negative impact of controlling this cowherd was just that. It was not as painful as Chen Ming expected when he broke through from the frigate to the destroyer when he controlled the refraction. It was just like doing a normal thing. However, Chen Ming still found that the number of currently connected spaceships on the panel had become 2/3. It seemed that controlling the new spaceship still consumed his mental power, otherwise his psychic power would not have increased accordingly. Chen Ming put the Centurion back online to support the fleet at the edge of the battle line. Then he opened the panel of the cowherd. A panel that almost completely occupied his entire field of vision immediately popped up. However, Chen Ming did not have time to check the specific values of the panel in detail. He could only quickly scan the most critical content on the panel for the spacecraft: radiation, armor, weapons, and aircraft unique to aircraft carriers. The radiation capacity of the cowherd is currently 2159/6000, which is in a fairly good state. After all, the weapons of the cowherd are mostly missile weapons that will not increase the radiation capacity, so all its radiation capacity can basically be used for pure shield protection, and the radiation state is naturally better. The shield has not been broken, so the armor will naturally not be damaged. Therefore, there is no problem with the armor of the cowherd. However, there are some problems with the weapons. The panel of the cowherd shows more than a dozen rows of missile mounting points located in different positions of the ship, and these mounting points have already experienced insufficient supply of ammunition. All the missile mounting points on the cowherd are used by the Annihilator missile. At the beginning of the battle, a large number of missiles were directly launched without considering the loss. Even if Chen Ming found a missile production workshop on the cowherd, it is too late to supply the launch needs of the mounting points. However, Chen Ming's ability is used in such places. The warehouse next to the production workshop has a large number of semi-finished products for missile production that are easy to store, and the materials are sufficient. Chen Ming's maintenance ability allows him to load bullets into weapons. Whether it is ordinary metal projectiles or complex missiles, as long as there are materials, they can be directly loaded. However, Chen Ming did not rush to start. There is another thing that needs his attention. The fighter planes of the cowherd. Flight deck, first floor 39 of 80, 16. This is a line of information related to fighter planes displayed on the panel. There are 3 other lines with similar contents. Each of these 4 lines represents a flight deck of the cowherd. The first number in the specific content refers to the number of fighter planes currently docked on the flight deck. The second number is the upper limit of the number of fighter planes that each deck can carry. The third number is the number of fighter planes currently engaged in diplomatic warfare. The overall data is basically the same. Chen Ming can be sure that the cowherd must have prepared enough fighter planes before departure. The missing number on the panel means that the fighter squadrons on each deck have suffered nearly 1/3 of combat losses. Chen Ming can't help the spacecraft outside now, and the panel can't affect those fighters. But for those fighters parked on the deck that have not yet set off, or have been damaged and are returning to the air, he can still do something. After determining where his ability is needed, Chen Ming immediately pressed the repair button on the panel. Just a dozen seconds after he did this, a noise suddenly came from the captain's communication channel. A voice said in an extremely nervous and hasty voice, "Captain, all the fighters on the deck were suddenly repaired by metal liquid that came out of nowhere, and those liquids are automatically reconstructing the lost fighters. What the hell is going on?" Chen Ming was very close to the captain, so he naturally heard the voice of the communication channel. He was actually quite surprised that the panel could not only repair damaged fighters, but even repair the lost spacecraft. This ability to replenish fighters can always replenish the fighters on the deck to the upper limit of the flight deck. Of course, this is counting the fighters that are still fighting outside and have not yet returned. It can only be said that Chen Ming always feels that the repair function that he had on this panel at the beginning is the ability that can only be explained by metaphysics. He does not need to master the information of the things that need to be repaired, and he does not need to master the repair technology. As long as the things to be repaired are on the spacecraft and there are enough materials, Chen Ming dares to repair it. It is completely different from the transformation that Chen Ming must master the relevant technology himself, which is quite outrageous. And not only the flight deck, but also information from other places has been coming one after another. "Captain, a large amount of metal liquid has flowed into the launch point from the missile mounting point to form an annihilator missile. Should we continue to launch?" "Captain, there is an accident with the materials in the ship's warehouse. All the semi-finished missiles in stock have melted and penetrated the wall of the ship and flowed out directly. The warehouse next to the deck is the same. All the fighter parts and the reserve fighters that have not been debugged have the same situation." Several messages from different departments appeared here at the same time. The captain immediately looked at Chen Ming next to him. "Mr. Chen?" Chen Ming nodded. After estimating that his mental strength was enough to support the scale of consumption just now, he said, "Please arrange a shuttle for me. At the same time, let all the destroyer-level ships rotate closer. I need to contact other ships." The captain took a deep breath, forced himself to accept this unimaginable situation, and bowed slightly to Chen Ming and said, "I will arrange it for you right away." Chen Ming's idea is very simple. His ability can quickly switch between the ships he controls. Then as long as he controls all the company's spaceships, and when a spaceship has a problem, he can switch control to it and repair it in the first time. Relying on the powerful ability of the panel, a layer of spiritual energy protection is provided for all spaceships. In short, there are 4 words: quick cut and quick repair. Moreover, the consumption of repairing spaceships is not much for Chen Ming now. Chen Ming has been consuming mental power for repair and transformation work for some time. At the same time, he is also exercising with whispering stones and nonsense stones, which is very effective in improving his mental power. In addition, Chen Ming has rested for more than 10 hours waiting in the lounge before, so it should not be a problem to support another battle. However, Chen Ming is also self-aware, and he doesn't really think about controlling all spaceships. Just controlling all the destroyers of the fleet for repair is almost the limit of his current mental power. While the captain arranged a shuttle for Chen Ming, the cowherd once again poured tons of annihilator missiles in the direction of the military fleet. And almost every moment after that, the highest level of firepower output was maintained. Like an endless sea of missiles, coupled with the organized fighter planes that seemed to be always filling the front line. The situation on the battlefield suddenly became a little skewed because of this. At the same time, on the side of the military fleet, there was a ship that fell at the back of the front line and did not directly participate in the battle. This is a law enforcement destroyer with a special orange-red paint job. From the appearance, it can be seen that it has definitely undergone a lot of special modifications. And on the top armor of this law enforcement ship, there is also an orange-red eagle-shaped logo, and there is a 14 mark below the logo. In the command room of this military flagship, the commander of this battle is sitting behind the main control panel of the spacecraft. The commander looks very young and wears a well-fitting military uniform, but his uniform is different from that of other soldiers. There is an eagle-shaped logo on the left chest that is the same as the top of the spacecraft. At this time, he was looking at the real-time data uploaded from the front line, analyzing the situation on the battlefield, and issuing the most appropriate orders based on it. However, his expression was still the same as before, with a calm look. But he had some doubts in his heart, because the data transmitted back was a little wrong. The commander had a very deep understanding of most of the ships that might appear on the battlefield. The impression of a special ship like the Cowherd was even deeper, and at the moment, the Cowherd had obviously exerted its capabilities far beyond what it should have. The first thought that came to the commander's mind was that the Cowherd chose to overload and equip the ship's weapons for combat effectiveness. But doing so would usually easily lead to some non-combat problems on the spacecraft. Even if it can have strong combat effectiveness in the short term, it will definitely not last long. Therefore, he did not have any special emotions due to the sudden outbreak of the Cowherd. Instead, he continued to command with a calmer mind. Even if the Cowherd could exert actual combat power far beyond normal conditions, even if the Cowherd itself was a very powerful ship among destroyer-class ships, but it was just a ship, and it would definitely not make a big wave in a battlefield with more than 100 ships. Moreover, the commander did not believe that the war reserve materials on the Cowherd were unlimited. No matter how many fighter planes and missiles there were, as long as there were restrictions, he could handle them all. From the beginning of the battle, even during the period when there was no advantage in the number of warships, the commander could rely on his command technology to firmly grasp the situation in his hands. So, he had such confidence. The commander's precise command was transmitted to every military ship on the battlefield through the fleet communication channel, and suddenly brought greater suppression to the company's fleet than before. But the problem immediately appeared again. The commander could keenly perceive from the changes in the battle situation that more company ships had the same situation as the Cowherd, and suddenly exerted combat capabilities far beyond the normal combat power limit of the ship. So many local battles that should have been advantageous under his planning turned out to be unexpected. The situation that should have relied on his dispatch to gain advantages in the exchange of small-scale combat power radiation energy on the battlefield and forced the opponent to shrink the front lines suddenly changed. There was a situation where the firepower was not enough to defeat the enemy's shield, but instead caused the ship executing the order to fall into danger. Although this did not happen at the same time, some ships in some places did achieve some results under his command. But the places that had just achieved results would be immediately compensated by the company's ships whose combat power suddenly increased. The commander felt that every company ship could achieve several times more radiation energy capacity and firepower output than normal ships. Whether it was live ammunition, missiles, or energy weapons, they were all like unlimited, constantly counterattacking military ships. Even their shields could last longer than normal. It was as if the entire ship was refreshed when it was about to reach its limit. The commander's experience had a problem, but he did not panic, but threw away all the past experience in his mind. He slowed down the offensive to oppress the company's fleet and began to re-examine the company's fleet. By checking the real-time situation of many small-scale battles that constitute a large battlefield, the commander discovered some situations. He found that not all ships in the company's fleet would have capabilities far beyond normal conditions, but only destroyer-level ships would have such special performance. And another feature was also caught by him, that is, all ships with far more combat power than their own upper limit only had such performance after approaching the Cowherd. Did the cowherd prepare a lot of combat supplies to replenish other ships? No. The commander immediately denied his idea because he found more situations. According to the results of the sensor scan, next to the cowherd, there was a small shuttle used for small-scale personnel transfer between ships parked there. And every spaceship approaching the cattle herder is not approaching the cattle herder, but approaching the shuttle. Only when the destroyer that has come into contact with the shuttle returns to the front line of the battlefield will it exert a more terrifying combat capability. Could it be? The commander had an immature guess in his mind. He immediately called his deputy, and while commanding the fleet, he said with two minds, this time, in addition to patrolling and inspecting the areas where Yuhui ships have appeared many times, is there another thing to do? Track down a wanted criminal? The deputy immediately gave him an answer, yes, this person is called Chen Ming, and he is most likely in the fleet of Shinda Company. Chen Ming, what about his intelligence? The deputy immediately found the intelligence sorted out by the military at the military outpost and began to dictate it to the commander who had no time to read the intelligence himself. Chen Ming, a senior maintenance engineer at the head office of Cinda Rockwell Corporation, later became the senior maintenance engineer team leader of Cinda Corporation's mining subsidiary and performed cryo-hibernation missions at the DG C-9527 mining station. In April 5569 AD, he colluded with pirates to release large-scale biological hazards at the mining station. This intelligence was confirmed yesterday, and a related wanted notice was issued. The commander did not hear the next words from his deputy and asked, nothing else? The outpost basically gave some identity resumes, with no special content. No? What about his family background? Orphan. Then what is his reason for doing this? It is not known yet. The commander's expression changed rarely, and he said, a man who was obviously doing field work to seek promotion suddenly colluded with pirates to release large-scale biological hazards where he worked? I remember that the military here blocked the galaxy for 30 years, but failed to find the people who had been staying in the galaxy? Instead, the victim of a space station, the Cinda Company, found him as the culprit, and then sent an escort fleet to pick him up? Are you kidding? The commander said, and the frequency of the fleet under his command slowed down again. He took the terminal from his deputy and retrieved several files from the military. At the same time, he also retrieved some additional information investigated by his men. After confirming these things, the commander suddenly sneered and said, hee, Cinda's mining rights, Cinda's mining space station, people who escaped from the space station, and the output of sky steel belonging to the military. Why didn't I pay attention to this issue when I participated in the mission before? The deputy next to him wanted to say that because you had been holding it in for too long, your mind was full of fighting with Yu Hui, and you took the initiative to ask for this task of reviewing the places where Yu Hui frequently appeared without thinking, and you didn't care about the station master's face at all, but he didn't dare to say it in the end. The commander suddenly put down the terminal and looked at the deputy and said, where are the ships that were said to have misfired weapons just now? Give me their list. You know what I want. The deputy nodded, and after leaving for a while, he immediately returned to the command room. He handed a piece of paper and a list of personnel to the commander. The commander quickly checked and said expressionlessly, they are all the station master's cronies. Are they using me as a pawn? Are the soldiers here rotten? So what do you think? The commander waved his hand and said, it's okay, let's continue fighting. Although the station master suspected that he was using him as a pawn, he had nothing to do in this remote corner of the star field. Commanding the fleet to fight was his favorite thing, and the target of the battle might be a psychic. The commander had never heard of any psychic in Cinda Company who could enhance the ability of the spacecraft, or he had never heard of any psychic with such ability. There were senior executives in Cinda Company sent by the military, and the information about psychics could not be completely concealed from the military, so the psychic on the shuttle must be a newly awakened psychic who had just joined the company. And Cinda Company sent the highest level fleet that could be organized in a short period of time to pick up Chen Ming, which simply made Chen Ming's importance clear. At the same time, The commander did not believe that a person who traveled half a light year from a space station full of biological hazards on a damaged spaceship that did not even have a hyperspace channel system and returned to the pirate space station alive would be an ordinary person. Once the current situations are combined, it is easy to guess that Chen Ming is a psychic. The commander can even guess the general situation directly. The military dropped biological weapons on the space station for the benefit of Skysteel, and then Chen Ming just escaped in the cryogenic hibernation chamber. 30 years later, Chen Ming woke up and awakened the psychic power of spaceship control on the dangerous space station, and then relied on the damaged spaceship to return to the pirate space station, and contacted the Cinda company to prepare to counterattack the military. At this juncture, the military discovered Chen Ming's existence and prepared to deal with this threat. Although the commander himself did not have the slightest good impression of the dirty things done by the military at the military outpost, he had a certain appreciation for Chen Ming, who returned to the human world from an extremely dangerous environment. But the battle has already begun, and it is a confrontation between the psychic talent of the psychic and the command skills he learned later in life. He doesn't want to miss this opportunity. Anyway, he will not reveal the news that Chen Ming is likely to be a psychic. The information provided by the military outpost does not show any signs of this at all, which means that the military investigation here is not comprehensive enough, and he does not need to help others clean up their mess. And if he really wins in the end, he will definitely not deliberately kill people, but will find a way to get Chen Ming away safely. They are now short of psychic manpower. It is more profitable to capture a psychic than to kill a psychic to make the military of this star region happy. As for the Cinda company, if it loses the war, it will have no say at all. However, he will try to restrain himself as much as possible. After all, Chen Ming is from the Cinda company. It would be bad if too many Cinda company spacecrafts were destroyed, causing Chen Ming to be too resistant to joining them after being captured. Of course, this restraint will only appear when the battle situation is completely one-sided. After all, he was still not sure whether he could defeat Chen Ming's psychic talent with his command skills. If not, everything he was thinking about now was just empty talk. The commander turned his attention back to the battlefield. His eyes were fixed on the shuttle next to the herder. "Are you there, Chen Ming?" The military commander completely targeted Chen Ming. The battle line that he had just relaxed because he was distracted by intelligence was instantly tightened. The battle line suddenly advanced a lot to the company's side. For ships that did not have time to retreat had their shields directly broken. Only one destroyer, under the protection of Chen Ming, relied on the panel repair to forcibly discharge the almost overflowing radiation. The other 3 frigates that lost their shield protection were immediately submerged by the subsequent attacks, and there was no possibility of rescue. 2 of them were destroyed instantly, and only one was lucky enough to be paralyzed, lost its combat capability, and was pushed out of the battlefield by the impact of the weapon. And this is just the beginning. In a normal battle, the fighters that maintain a battle line are relatively evenly distributed. Generally speaking, there will not be a situation where one side is full of guards and the other side is full of destroyers. But this means that the cattle herders sitting in the center of the battle line are a certain distance away from both ends of the battle line. Therefore, letting the destroyers at both ends of the battle line return to the cowherd and let Chen Ming take control will lead to a short window period in front of the battle line. Even if they rotate one by one at a very low efficiency, the front of the battlefield is prone to a short period of weakening combat power. The military commander's extremely keen battlefield sense allowed him to immediately seize this opportunity. While Chen Ming was controlling the destroyer, he made a very radical deployment directly on the battle line. It put a lot of pressure on the ships on the front line. Even if it failed to break through the battle line and create results, it would make other warships on the battle line difficult to resist. In addition, the commander also deliberately noted which ships had approached Chen Ming's shuttle and deliberately let the military ships actively avoid the location of these ships when attacking. In normal battles, he took the initiative to command more ships to attack the ships that had not been rotated back to accept Chen Ming's control. Since the battle line has always needed destroyers as the backbone to maintain it, Chen Ming's progress in controlling the destroyers has not been completely completed. Therefore, under the commander's targeted attack, Problems occurred everywhere on the front line. Chen Ming could only use the panel's ability to maintain the position of the front line according to the captain's emergency position, so that the spacecraft would not be destroyed and the front line would not be completely defeated. This caused Chen Ming to not only lose his mental strength, but also his physical strength. It is very normal to concentrate on doing one thing with high intensity and then feel distracted and exhausted. But it was still difficult for Chen Ming to accept such a feeling in just a few minutes. He couldn't help rubbing his temples, soothing his brain, and continuing to hold on. This was the first time Chen Ming felt such a huge pressure on his head since he left the space station until today. And this is the real strength of the army in combat. Even the existence of psychic power is difficult to make up for. Chen Ming took a few deep breaths and adjusted his mentality that was somewhat affected by the situation of the battle. Anyway, the military's purpose is very clear now. That is, to kill him. People are going to die. Don't fight hard and wait for the next life? Chen Ming looked at the special orange-red law enforcer on the sensor screen. The military commander is definitely on that ship. If there is a chance, he must destroy that ship as soon as possible. Only then will he have the confidence and opportunity to win this battle. Although Chen Ming can't do anything about the military commander now, Chen Ming has thought of a solution to the problem and told the captain, "Let the ships on the front line stagger and then turn around. At the same time, change the position of the ships and try to make sure that there are ships under his control on the entire front line. As long as the ships controlled by Chen Ming return, the combat effectiveness of the ships will be strengthened by the panel maintenance ability, and the front line can fill the section that was just repelled. When all the destroyers are controlled by him, the uneven distribution of combat effectiveness on the front line and the relatively weak combat effectiveness in some places will no longer exist." The captain was very happy to accept Chen Ming's previous proposal, but he did not accept the suggestion of changing the position of the ships at all. The reason is quite simple. The command system of the Shinda Company fleet is currently put together temporarily and is very fragile. The captain cannot let the rescue ship sent by Shinda Company lead the support ship at the space station, and vice versa. They can only command separately, otherwise once there is any mistake in his command, this fragile command system will lead to confusion of command power and some uncontrollable problems. And a while after Chen Ming made the suggestion, the captain also told Chen Ming a bad news. "Mr. Chen, we can't hold on to the manpower here." "What manpower?" "Manpower for fighter jets." Chen Ming reacted immediately after hearing it. The fighter plane itself needs to be controlled by the pilot, and the pilot needs to judge the damage of the fighter plane and the timing of returning home. Although Chen Ming can directly repair the fighter plane and even replenish the damaged fighter plane, but the loss of personnel cannot be made up. The reduction of maintenance time means that the driver can rest and take turns less time. Keep rushing to the battlefield without stopping for a moment. The captain can tell Chen Ming about this matter. "I am afraid that the pilots on the cowherd have been damaged to the extent that they can't support a full-strength fighter squadron to set off. And the remaining pilots on the ship must have driven the fighter plane out several times, and their spirits are more tired than he who stays in the safer rear. If this continues, the military will fail to defeat the fleet, and the fleet itself will have problems due to excessive internal losses. Although all fighter planes are equipped with emergency escape pods, the actual loss should not be to this extent. But it is really hard to say how many pilots can actually come back." Chen Ming really didn't want to hear what the captain said, but this is the inevitable defect of aircraft carriers and fighters under normal circumstances. Unless it is like the Storm class of Tachyon technology, which is equipped with a Terminator fighter squadron controlled by AI. Tachyon technology seems to have initially completed the technology of remotely controlling spacecraft without being affected by the complex environment of the battlefield. If Chen Ming can get the Storm class, then this situation will not happen now. But Shinda Company is different from Tachyon technology, which is openly researching AI-driven spacecraft technology and walking on the edge of the law. Shinda Company can only rely on people to drive fighters, and personnel damage is inevitable. Chen Ming is now quite a pity. If he can control the cowherd in advance and install the Afterglow AI core on the cowherd for some simple modifications, maybe Afterglow can control these fighters. Although the effect may be much worse than that of people driving in person, after all, Chen Ming does not have it. And this is just thinking about it, Chen Ming has no way to solve the problem of insufficient manpower now. So he could only respond helplessly, I know. At the same time, the repair of the cowherd fighter plane was stopped. The fighter plane no longer needed to be repaired, so at least his spirit could relax a little. However, the spirit could be relaxed, but the tight front line could not. There is still a last batch of fighter planes to support, but the ability to protect friendly ships will definitely drop a level in the future. Fortunately, there was no problem with the cowherd's missiles, and they should be able to resist for a while. But the materials of the missiles have been consumed a lot so far. The materials prepared on the other destroyers controlled by Chen Ming for repairing the spacecraft after the battle are almost used up, just like the missile materials. And the weapons and ammunition on these spacecraft are also close to emergency. If they continue, they can only rely on the materials stored in the cowherd warehouse to support them. When these reserve materials are exhausted, the combat effectiveness of the entire fleet will decline greatly. Although the military is in the same situation, and their war reserve materials cannot be instantly converted into combat and endurance capabilities like Chen Ming. But their combat capability is stronger than the space station and the company's fleet. They can achieve greater results with less loss. In addition, the military ships are much more than the company's at the beginning. After giving the company's fleet so much pressure through exquisite command technology, forcing the fleet to consume supplies in batches, Chen Ming doesn't think the military will be able to survive the Cinda fleet that is constantly using reserve supplies to support the combat effectiveness of the spacecraft. Even though Chen Ming has asked the captain to request material assistance from the space station. But it takes time to collect and load the materials and transport them. In the current battle, it may be too late to send them. With the help of Chen Ming, the Cinda company's fleet has gradually shown signs of decline. The military has resisted the outbreak brought by Chen Ming's ability, and the situation they have been desperately maintaining has shifted towards them again. At this time, the total number of ships that can still fight on both sides of the battlefield is less than 140, and a quarter of the warships have sunk in this hyperspace. Most of the remaining warships were also damaged and could no longer withstand the baptism of more severe battles. Chen Ming now has only a little over 50 warships, while the military still has more than 80. You should know that at the beginning, although Chen Ming's support for the Cinda company totaled less than 30 ships, with the support of the space station, the total number of ships has approached 100. But now, the fleet has lost nearly half. And there are no more ships that can be supported from the space station. The situation at the space station is the same as the fighter plane of the cowherd. There are spaceships, but no one is driving them. In the two previous attacks by Yu Hui, the company helped to reimburse the losses each time, and there were also subsequent spacecraft that could be used for combat. However, the losses in personnel were not replenished so quickly. However, on the military side, there were more than 100 militarized spacecraft, and there were more than 70 remaining after the battle. Obviously, there was not much difference between the companies and the military spacecraft in terms of the technical level of low-level spacecraft. However, due to the gap in the organization and command of the fleet and the actual combat capability, the final battle loss ratio was 2-1. The only good news in this situation now, only the company's fleet lost, and most of the destroyed and paralyzed ones were frigates. And because of Chen Ming's protection, there are still 31 destroyers left. However, this good news is a bit bad under the cover of bad news. Because the number of remaining destroyers in the military fleet has exceeded that of the company's fleet. It's not just because the military destroyers were more than the company's at the beginning. It's also because the military spacecraft are equipped with professional maintenance technicians. Most of the spaceships that were not destroyed on the spot were only paralyzed and withdrew from the battlefield. As long as there is no critical damage, they will soon return to the battlefield again. This is also one of the reasons why the proportion of casualties on both sides of the battle is large. In short, even if Chen Ming can improve the upper limit of the spaceship, through repairs, the spaceship can be made brand new, so that the combat effectiveness of the spaceship can be burst in a short time, and even as long as there are sufficient supplies, it can continue to burst. Relying on the reserved combat supplies, all disadvantages including the number of spaceships, weapons, and personnel can be made up, and even a little advantage can be regained. but it can only be regained a little. The overall gap between the company and the military is there. The military is not like the Cinda company, which only has less than 30 reliable spaceships to use at the beginning and has to rely on space stations for support. It is also not like the fleet's command system can only be temporarily pieced together, making it difficult to finally control the battlefield situation. Under the huge gap in various aspects, it can only be said that Chen Ming has tried his best to fight to this point with his psychic power. If there are no variables afterwards, then failure is inevitable. At the same time, the commander at the enforcer level also felt that the balance of victory was completely tilted. He had already sensed that the enemy had reached its limit. It was not Chen Ming's limit, but the limits of other people, other ships, and the fleet. The patrol ships of the space station and the ships escorted by the Cinda company were completely inadequate compared to the military ships, and they could not fully exert the capabilities of Chen Ming that the commander felt during the battle. But no matter what factors were affecting it, whether the company was not well prepared or the military had prepared means in advance, victory is victory. Then that's it. The commander had found a loophole in the fleet's front line and was ready to press on at any time to destroy the company's fleet's combat capability and end the battle. It only took one more straw to break the camel's back. But at this moment, a ship that was obviously a military destroyer suddenly arrived at the edge of the battlefield from the hyperspace channel. The overall shape like a spearhead had already made its identity clear. This was the armor-piercing class that Chen Ming had been waiting for a long time. When the armor-breaking finally arrived at the edge of the battlefield, Chen Ming couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The reason why the armor-breaking arrived slowly was because it spent too much time on the road. Although Chen Ming paid special attention to the armor-breaking, he tried to hide or pass directly from the outside when passing through the star system. But it couldn't completely avoid the armor-breaking being chased by government patrols several times when passing through some star systems. It could only get rid of them by entering the hyperspace channel cloud to avoid the sensor scanning. Entering the cloud layer of the hyperspace channel cloud will inevitably be affected by hyperspace lightning, so the armor-breaking had to go to the dark cemetery first after arriving nearby and repair it before coming here. The total time spent was more than doubled that of Chen Ming's return. But at least the armor-breaking successfully arrived here at the last critical moment, which is the most important thing. The commander obviously also noticed the destroyer that suddenly appeared at the edge of the battlefield. He seemed to have some impression of this ship in his mind, but he was not sure, so he did not give the order to attack. Instead, he immediately asked his deputy, "Whose ship is that?" The deputy immediately replied, "That is the ship of the Star Region government, an armor-piercing class." The Star Region government had previously notified the military here that they would conduct a spacecraft experiment nearby, using the afterglow as an experimental reference. But the document said that their fleet would not arrive for a few days, and there is only one ship coming now, so there may be some special arrangements. The commander nodded slightly, focused his attention back on commanding the fleet, and said, "That has nothing to do with us. Send a message to that ship. Tell them to stop or go around to the outpost. Don't get in the way here." Yes. Chen Ming, who was on the shuttle, suddenly received a message from the military from the armor-breaking class, which surprised him. But he immediately realized that this was an opportunity for a surprise attack. He immediately replied "Received" to the military fleet, and then asked the armor-breaking class to pretend that everything was normal and avoid the front line, keeping an ambiguous distance and bypassing the center of the battlefield. Although this behavior was generally correct, the commander, who was keenly aware of danger at this time, still noticed the abnormality of the armor-breaking class. What are the government people doing? Keep sending messages to keep them away from the battlefield. The deputy was assigned by the commander to deliver the message, and the commander was already prepared to deal with unexpected situations. The moment he received the second military message, Chen Ming knew that time was running out. Although the armor-breaking class has not yet reached its ideal position, it is now in a position that Chen Ming can accept. Chen Ming controlled the armor-breaking class and suddenly began to accelerate. At the same time, he turned the bow and aimed at the military flagship, the Special Enforcer class. All the special equipment on the armor-breaking class started up with Chen Ming's control. The antiparticle energy activation module caused a huge amount of energy fluctuations visible to the naked eye around the armor-breaking class. The large high-energy focusing system module made the large weapons of the armor-breaking class covered with energy-guided streamers. The energy stabilizer stabilized the restrained energy bombs that were constantly fluctuating. One by one, the energy balls that were almost condensed into substance flashed in the automatic pulse laser barrel carried by the armor-breaking class. Once the energy was stored, 30 consecutive large restrained energy bombs that could almost engulf a spacecraft like the Iron Ore were poured out, headed straight for the military flagship. The commander had already prepared in advance. The Enforcer class had already opened the shield in advance, and 2 other destroyers returned to the Enforcer for protection. Share the damage for the Enforcer class. But the automatic pulse laser is a large weapon. Just when the first energy bomb hit the shield of a destroyer, the relatively weak shield of the military almost instantly reached the edge of overload, and obvious ripples appeared on the entire shield. The destroyer didn't even have time to close the shield before the second restraint energy bomb hit it. The shield of the destroyer burst directly, and the entire destroyer was covered with violent flashing arcs caused by radiation overload. Then it was completely submerged by the remaining energy bombs. The military's always powerful armor did not last long in front of the large energy weapons blessed by 2 special equipment. As the subsequent energy bombs followed up, the armor of the military destroyer was destroyed, and the hull was almost instantly destroyed in hyperspace. There was no chance of resistance, and more than half of the remaining restraint energy bombs continued to move forward. The second destroyer did not retreat because the previous spaceship was instantly destroyed, but continued to block the law enforcer of Chen Ming's target. Everyone on this destroyer was ready to sacrifice. Its shield also collapsed at the first touch, but unlike the previous destroyer, it stuck to the point where the shield was closed. While allowing the radiation energy system to bear the maximum damage, it did not overload the ship. The ship can still turn the hull to make the area of itself attacked larger, allowing more armor to bear more damage. Although it could not escape the fate of being destroyed, at least its sacrifice allowed the Special Enforcer class to take this opportunity to enter the protection circle of the military ships. The military fleet began to dispatch, temporarily slowing down the suppression of the Cinda fleet, and began to encircle the most threatening armor-piercing class among all the ships present. However, Chen Ming had planned the route and also communicated with the captain in advance. A sudden change of direction directly entered the company fleet like the Enforcer class. Under the protection of a large number of ships, the extremely sharp spear of armor-piercing can completely disregard its own safety and exert its strongest ability. After 15 seconds of weapon cooling, the automatic pulse laser began to accumulate energy again. The leading military destroyer fired a round of large energy restraint bombs at the most stressful area on the current front. Just like before, the destroyer turned into dust in space without any struggle. The momentum of the military fleet suddenly stagnated. It can only be said that the armor-piercing is worthy of its name. Although the automatic pulse laser it carries does not have the terrifying instantaneous high-energy output of the tachyon spear, but its restraint energy bomb burst ability in a short period of time is also quite impressive. At the same time, it also has a slow shooting mode. It does not need to cool down, and can continuously output large restraint energy bombs at a rate of 1 shot per second. With 2 special devices on the spacecraft that can be quickly cooled by Chen Ming's maintenance function. No military ship can withstand the firepower of this large weapon. With the addition of armor-piercing, the frontal pressure of the battle line was reduced sharply. The situation of the battle was reversed almost instantly.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.